Good morning from Zürich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. Coming up on today's program, Gabe Bullard is here, Myriam Zumbühl, and also Juliet Linley. Juliet Linley, where have you been? I think it's a big week for you. We won't talk about that. No, we won't. What's caught your eye?
Well, I just got back from Rome, so we're of course going to talk a bit about Italian politics, but also, we've had the Zürich Film Festival here. Loved it. We can talk about that as well, and maybe Demi Moore's interview with Seth Meyers.
Yeah, we could maybe talk a little bit about Demi as well. Plus, we'll get the latest updates from our correspondent in Helsinki.
Finland pays its citizens 10 grand to make more babies. And would you run around a single New York apartment block to win a race? A Finn has done it for 16 years. I'm Monocle's Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsoff, and I'll be bringing you the news from the Nordic region.
Very, very exciting. All that's happening on that side of the Baltic. Plus, our fashion editor, Natalie Theodosi, is going to be joining us from Paris. And the founder of Magculture magazine, Jeremy Leslie, gives us an insight onto the world of print media, as always. It's the 20th of October, 2024, live from Zurich. This is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday with Tyler Brûlé.
And good morning from a very autumnal Zurich. Very nice to be back here at Dufourstrasse. A series of smiling faces, a very busy program ahead of us. Myriam, very nice to see you, but just before we went on air, you said you're splitting town already. I believe there's a plane with your name on it leaving for Mallorca.
I'm going to Mallorca, and I'm gathering with a couple of very lovely ladies. But I am under pressure. Apparently, everybody needs to bring along, apart from a good suitcase. I might change my wardrobe a little bit after what I heard from you. Everybody needs to bring a killer dance move. Like, where do I start?
So a killer dance move because there's a competition, or
no,
is
there will be dancing.
How you light up the dance floor?
There will be good food and dancing, and it's expected that everybody brings a dance move. I mean, who gets the idea? Anyhow, I still need to come up with an idea. And so last night I scrolled on YouTube. I watched the Graham Norton show, which apparently does, every guest more or less needs to do a dance move. Yeah, I'm working on it.
I tried to stay up for Graham Norton, just in normal sort of, broadcast terms, not having to go and download it on Friday evening, but that did not happen. So, but any question, did you find a move?
Not yet. I'm still working. I'm open for suggestions.
Okay.
We tried to suggest the Macarena, but she completely
listen, so you, just before we went on air, you were also sort of kind of running a routine, the opening scene from The Perfect Couple,
yes.
Which the way you did it does look like the Macarena. So, but I've not seen it yet. So.
You're going to binge watch it tonight, and we're going to talk about it.
No, I'm going to continue with Slow Horses. Actually, I got through the first 2 of the new season, which was very good.
And Pas de Vague.
And did you watch Pas de Vague?
Yes, of course not.
You did not watch it?
I did not.
Okay. Anyway, this is one of our big our sort of autumn tips. I mean, even though the film came out a little bit earlier in the year. Gabe Bullard is also here. Made the big journey all the way from Basel this morning. Very nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yeah, great. A great train trip this morning.
I hope so. I mean, it's a Sunday morning in Switzerland. I hope there weren't any sort of too many dregs left over from last night. Or there's always a few casualties on a Sunday morning on the train.
There are. A few people a little more bleary-eyed than me, but everyone had their cup of coffee. Everyone who was awake had their cup of coffee, I'll say.
And what's happening at your end of the country?
Back from a really enjoyable night at the opera last night. Basel's putting on this sort of more experimental version of The Barber of Seville. You always have to kind of update the classics. They're doing it with human-sized puppets playing the lead roles. So the singers as well as puppeteers are moving about the stage. Very sparse stage, and then also the symphony orchestra is in a chamber alignment on the stage itself. So sort of a different way of presenting the music, but it was a lot of fun.
Because the puppets take up a lot of real estate, hence the sparse stage, or?
No, I think just to kind of pare it down a little bit more, and everyone who is on stage is in all black, including the puppeteers, but you see the singers and the puppeteers sort of sometimes moving in unison, operating a character, and then other times splitting apart, sort of add a different dimension to the story, keep things a little bit more lively.
Juliet, you're back from, ask your question. Then we want to go to Rome.
Are we talking hand puppets or marionettes?
What
are we looking at?
It's sort of life-size. The actor's legs are the legs of the puppet, and it holds over, and they're moving the head, and a different person operating each hand. It's very, very complex, yeah.
Very complex.
That sounds like the solution to your dance moves.
Maybe,
Myriam.
yeah.
Just you get like 3 or 4 more people to all do the operations.
I need to bring a team. I see.
I think we're all coming with you, Myriam, to your party.
Okay, so Juliet, let's take us back to Rome.
Rome and Tuscany.
School holidays.
School holidays, as we know. So
Haven't your kids graduated yet?
I know.
It's taking forever.
For 10 grand, if you lived in Finland, would you have a kid?
Well, would you have a kid?
I don't think 10 grand is going to get you anywhere.
Right.
But no, so last dip in the sea in Tuscany, last dip in the sea on the little boat, which was lovely, beautiful. Not as chilly as Myriam's cold water swimming that she does here in Zurich. And then Rome, and we visited Palazzo Colonna. And of course, the idea was you've got to take your kids to do something cultural. I challenge you to imagine the enthusiasm on our 12-year-old's face walking through the frescoes and the galleries. But at least
this was the first time for them.
For them, it was. I mean, we've all seen it before, but or probably can't even remember when he was a toddler when he saw it last time. Anyway, it was good. It was great, and Rome was heaving. Everyone is complaining about so many visitors. I know we're hearing it from Barcelona and everywhere, but it is.
Did you find it oppressive? You did.
Oppressive or depressive?
Well, both.
Yeah, both. Yeah. All of the above. But I mean, I just love the city. It's my home city. I love walking in the little streets. Yes, it is.
It is your home city.
I lived there for 17 years.
Okay, all right.
And then again on a second wave with kids. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know where to duck and dive and avoid where all the hordes are, if you want to put it that way.
Did you pick up any news stories for us? Should we move to the news component of this program?
Let's just get that out of the way. You heard it in the headlines that the migrants have been taken back to Italy. But of course, I was asking people, so what do we make of Meloni and everything? And there is a general consensus that she's doing really well, and that she's doing really well at sort of being very centrist for the EU, but appeasing her far-right voters at home. So, for instance, you had, like the day before the migrants were shipped off to Albania, which was earlier this week, legislation had come out banning surrogacy abroad. Now, already surrogacy is banned in Italy and going abroad. And you think, well, that's really harsh. That's really anti-LGBTQ and everything. But then look at the details, and it's like very few, like a handful of couples affected. They're probably going to challenge the ruling anyway. And you've even got feminists saying, yeah, what's with surrogacy anyway? I mean, women's wombs should not be up for rent in any case. So you've got that, and then you've got the tribunal this Friday nixing the whole decision of sending the migrants to Albania. So yesterday they were shipped back, and on Monday there's going to be obviously a cabinet meeting with Meloni and her people saying this is just the leftist magistrates coming against us and everything. But the EU are all watching this, and it's von der Leyen has said it sounds like a great thing. So all eyes on Meloni, the tightrope walker at the moment. Well,
exactly, and also a bit of not quite a shuttle diplomat, but certainly a shuttle statesperson, because everyone wants to meet her, everyone wants to have time. What are sort of the solutions, etc. Myriam, we could get the news from Palma from you next week, but what has caught your eye? I believe there's some sort of cheese fest that you want to maybe discuss as well. Very important.
Well, actually, it was Cheese Week. Cheese Berlin. So that was last week. But I've been working on. I made a film about one of the best cheesemakers in Switzerland. I spent 10 years with this guy, so I learned a lot about cheese. And now I'll be speaking in Boston, and I'll tell the Americans, how we do cheese. It's part of a Swiss Next event, and so I've been looking. And just
for people know, Swiss Next is is an entrepreneurship, sort of innovation platform.
It's like
you could say
of Switzerland. Yes,
correct.
It's a part of the Corps Diplomatique, and it's promoting Swiss science and innovation and so on abroad. And so I'll be speaking in Boston about this. So I've been looking at how can cheese be produced in a more sustainable way. The short answer is there is no way, because when you look at the emissions and just how hard it actually is on the environment to produce anything that involves animals, and especially cows, there is no way around it. And at the moment, there is lots of vegan cheeses coming onto the market. And here's what I have to say: a vegan cheese, a cashew cheese,
is not a cheese.
It's not a cheese.
No.
It's not a cheese.
It's a spread, or it's something else.
It is, or it's like a mousse, and it can be delicious and everything. But here is the thing. I've just been looking at the water it takes, to produce cashew nuts. Also, these cashew nuts, they don't grow here. So it's very difficult. It's like you're comparing apples and pears in a way. What I can say is, and also what I've learned from this cheesemaker, from Willy Schmid, is there is a sustainable way to do it. It means that you work very closely with the land and with the animals and with the farmers, but it also means that you produce less, right? So to cut a long story short, the only way to do it is that we eat less cheese. We also produce less cheese, but that would actually be a good thing. When you look at the selections that you had, let's say even at the Migros, our big retail store, there is a lot of cheese I can totally live without. I can live without the feurige Hexe, which is like a cheese with chili. I can totally go without it.
See, I like a chili cheese. Gabe, you wanted to jump in on this topic from your end of the country.
Yeah. I'm curious though with the nut cheeses and the environmental impact. It does seem like we're starting to see a bit of a pullback from a number of these meatless or dairy options that we're finding have the same carbon footprint, have the same water use, or have similar environmental tolls. So.
Yes, and I also see what we sometimes forget is you think you do something good for the environment eating something plant-based. I understand that. But do you know how the cashew nut is produced? Do you know was land disowned and all of these things that, by the way, there is also an article about avocado, whoever is interested in the NZZ today. I think these are all the things that we don't measure into it, right?
What are they? I mean, of course, the avocado discussion is a very long one, but I'm wondering, what is the NZZ saying about it this morning?
About the avocado?
About the avocados.
So there is a story. The journalist traveled to a place in Mexico where most of the avocados were grown. Here's what happened. The farmers had it. So they shut everything down. They closed their community. They said, we want to be an avocado-free land because they've just had it. You know, there was so much corruption going on, some disowning the land and all of it. So maybe there's going to be a decrease in our avocado toast.
How do we replace guacamole? What's the other?
I was going to say,
what are you going to use? Wasabi beans.
I think I've seen there's some kind of like pea-based. There's like a pea-based something that makes it green. And anyway, it's
not the same, but
Gabe, okay. Aside from puppets on stage, maybe you want to cross the Atlantic as well. But what have you seen on the pages on screen in terms of what's making news for you?
Yes, so I have been doing a big dive into sort of my roots a bit in local media in the United States, because I think that it comes up every election year. But I think when you look at trust in media among voters, when you look at the base of the different presidential candidates, I think a lot of it comes down to who is still looking at their local news and who is seeing politicians locally. And I think that a lot of the mistrust in media that you see, a lot of the rightward shift is coming in the U.S. as local news operations have been decimated. And we're starting to see some pretty encouraging signs of life. There's a number of these worker-owned collectives that are starting up. One with some of my former colleagues in Washington just launched called 51st. There was Hearing Things, which is former staffers of Pitchfork for some music journalism. But there's this fund called Press Forward that just put out $20 million toward local newsrooms, $100,000 each. And these are local newsrooms. The Nome Nugget in Nome, Alaska, a very rural paper. Ethiopique in Washington, D.C., speaking to the Ethiopian diaspora there. So we're starting to see some of these places build up. And what's interesting to me in looking at these Press Forward grants going to small newsrooms in the U.S. is that they are catering to these very hyper-local, more niche or more geographically centralized audiences, and less of the chasing search clicks, anything like that, and reconnecting back with local people, which I think is going to be essential to building up trust, essential to building up a more informed voting bloc too.
So, Gabe, one of the challenges here, though, is that oftentimes this is a big conglomerate. It is some type of foundation that is piling money in to make these, of course, papers happen. Sometimes maybe there might be strings attached, like a little bit like, maybe the new guacamole. Where did the funding, what's the source for all of this as well? And I'm wondering, is there a dialogue about also how do we get back to something which is sustainable and not just having, sort of philanthropic journalism? I think if that is part of the challenge as well.
Exactly. And I think that this is something that we're also seeing just among competition for philanthropy, because you're seeing a lot of the smaller public broadcasters in the U.S. competing with these startup newsrooms for those philanthropic dollars. What you also see with Press Forward, in addition to giving this money to newsrooms, they're funding what they call infrastructural improvements, which are more accessible CMSs, more thinking around best practices for membership and building up sort of a subscriber base that way, so that people who maybe have been brought up not paying for news at all, just getting kind of everything for free, are now thinking, oh yeah, there's a local institution in my neighborhood. Let me give them $5, let me give them $10 a month in exchange for what I'm getting. So I think that we are seeing a big subscriber push to a lot of these groups, and the philanthropic funds are coming in to boost them, to boost the reporting, boost the outreach, and then also just build that necessary, payment processing structure so that they can, when they go out in the community, say, if you want to support us, if you want to subscribe, here's a very easy way to do it, seamless way to do it.
Okay, quick poll around the table. Myriam, I'll start with you. Local newspapers in Switzerland, of course, they are in many ways the lifeblood. It's actually one of the few countries that I know right now that have, and of course, they're under threat like everywhere else. But, you know, the Küsnachter, the Zürich Zeitung, all of these papers, they're incredibly important because they do connect you in a way in which, of course, if you read the NZZ or the Tagesanzeiger or whatever your daily paper might be, it's just not going to happen. So essential for you picking them up. And there's something about picking the local paper up as opposed to going to, I think, the app for that, if that paper even has an app, of course.
Oh, no, absolutely. I agree with you. And there is, by the way, there has been an initiative in Winterthur where, you know, a newspaper was shut down and they said, no, we need one. So, you know, private people would gather and raise money. It is very important. And I'll tell you what, so I grew up in a village and we had the Sarganserländer, and I didn't like the paper, but I needed it on a daily basis because you know
what's going
on. Well, it's just like wasn't interesting. I wasn't interested in reading about the, you know, like the Rabbit Club, Generalversammlung. This is not something that interests me, but it interested my grandmother, by the way. So it sort of holds the family together, but it holds the village together. And then you know who graduated at school, all of these things, and then.
Not Juliet's kids, because they're still in school, clearly.
But you knew what was going on, even if you were not in the village. And then there was one thing that was rather sad, but it's important. You read who died.
Oh, dear.
And
of course, the importance of the obits
exactly,
in the community
the Todesanzeigen. And then, of course, you would call or you would, you know, talk to that person, and that's how it holds the village together. Absolutely.
So we have two newspapers in Küsnacht, don't we, Tyler? We both live in that little village, and I do make an effort to troll through them to sort of see, like, oh, there's a Yodel Fest on Saturday. Let's see if my husband will come along and listen to that. Or, like, you know, there's the Hilby. They're going to be building up the fairground in the main square. When are we going to launch, though, the Monocle version in English? Because
I think we've got a magazine and a radio station. I think we're doing okay.
No,
actually.
local news. Local news about the Yodel Fest.
Yeah, we send out some niche newsletters. Gabe, what's happening down in Basel with your papers and local news?
Yeah, we've got the Basler Zeitung, and we've got
which is maybe that's more of a paper of scale. I mean, that's talking to the whole city.
Exactly. Yeah. In the small village I'm in, we have the Alschwiler Wolkenblatt, which comes out
there you go.
Weekly if you pay to subscribe, bi-weekly if you just by dint of living in the village you get the paper, which has a lot of that local information, like you were saying, that is so important. The things that you really turn to the paper for, the small comings and goings. And I think that as we're seeing papers struggle, one of the saddest decisions I see around the world is when they make these decisions in cutting coverage that cut the essential part of it. I was just reading the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, growing up my hometown paper. Once a wonderful paper is apparently now no longer going to be printing sports scores the next day if the game was at night, because they're printing even further away.
Further away, much earlier. Yeah.
And the thing is, as soon as I pull up in a new spot, the first thing I look for is the local paper. And I try to see what's going on, try to sort of get that information. There's something about having it in print and seeing, you know, this is what the journalists in this community are putting out. And to go anywhere and see that it's just rehash national stories, wire service copy, or out-of-date sports scores saying, you know, go to our website. Nothing makes me want to stop reading a paper more than saying, go to our website in print. I'm not going to the website either.
Myriam, quickly, we're going to go to a short break. Go.
I have one thing. So, for example, in Switzerland, in Zürich, we have the Zürich, which is very crucial for the whole cultural scene. The Zürich will no longer exist next year.
Which is part of the Tagesanzeiger,
It is part of the Tagesanzeiger. And I have lots of artistic friends, and they're like, where are we going to talk about our work? You know, where will people know if there's going to be a concert and this and that? So it actually is that threat, let's put it this way.
And I think it's a gap for someone to fill as well.
We'll see there you go.
We'll see what, and maybe NZZ will have a response to that. If you're listening to Monocle on Sunday, we're back right after this. You are back with Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. Just 10:23 here in Zurich, almost kind of 10:24, you could say. We're going to Paris now to join our fashion director, Natalie Theodosi, who's there in our bureau for us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Tyler.
So listen, it has been, we're out of Fashion Week period right now. Of course, you were in Istanbul last week, of course, with much of the Monocle crew, Natalie, discussing topics of design, fashion on stage. Do we want to rewind back to Istanbul, or do we want to have a little bit of a recap on what's happening in the world of course, fashion? Or, of course, we've got a new program that's launching, and of course, you're going to be the host of that show as well, Monocle on Fashion.
Exactly. I think lots going on, but I mean, we can do a bit of everything. We can start in Istanbul and then come back to Paris.
Well, let's why don't we start in Istanbul? I mean, maybe we spent a little bit of time maybe off stage as well. Maybe just it'd be interesting to maybe hear about your impressions, Natalie, just in terms of the state of the market there. Of course, you feel that there feels like there's a bit of a reboot going on in Turkey, certainly in Istanbul, of course, led by a government in opposition of Ankara. Of course, what was your impressions of the city?
Absolutely. I feel like walking around the city, we did a little bit of a retail tour as well. You can feel the energy that was missing a few years ago, and a lot of new investments, new shops. Back at our conference and speaking on stage as well, I was really impressed speaking with the two founders of the Turkish brand Nike, who spoke about kind of rejecting this obsession that Turkish designers and creatives had with the West, and just really owning their heritage. Some were looking at the Ottoman heritage, others in more recent history, and really setting up galleries and ateliers that work with the craftsmen in Turkey, especially in Istanbul, and showing off all their incredible skills and what they have to offer, and modernizing what Turkish design means. So that was something that felt like a really positive, heartwarming story that stayed with me since we were in Istanbul.
And then we moved a little bit further west as well. And you were talking, of course, to another set of founders behind the Budapest-based brand, Nanushka.
Exactly. Further west, but seeing them there, they actually found a lot of common ground with Istanbul and Budapest, and they had an amazing entrepreneurial story, which actually started 20 years ago. The founder, Sandra Sandor, started very naively, she said, out of school. Instead of taking a job in a design house, she was studying in London. She decided to move back home and start a brand, and it was something very local. But again, by finding the right artisans, the right manufacturers in her home, showing off all those skills that are present in Eastern Europe. And she built a very strong company. And then her partner, Peter, also joined her. And they managed to expand the business to now have a very global audience. And they're opening shops in London, in New York, in LA, and now also looking into bringing elements of hospitality, cafes, a mini hotel room above their London shop. So I think it's very interesting what they're doing and how they're approaching running a fashion business.
I just want to maybe bring everyone in on this. Myriam, I don't know if you've seen this in your travels, but it seems that everyone is doing a little bit of retail, and let's put a hotel. We've got what used to be maybe, the manager's office upstairs, and we're going to now put a small hotel room, small set of hotel rooms. I was just in Marseille at this really fantastic design store looking at which just caters and delivers the best in classic French household design, and of course they're putting a little shop. Pardon me, I was in Nice, not Marseille. Pardon me, it was in Nice, and they're doing this, and you see this sort of happening everywhere. Have you spotted that on your travels as well?
Yeah. So this summer I even stayed in the J. Crew Hotel on Nantucket Island.
J. Crew had a hotel.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what you're looking for your dance moves, of course, from the opening of the perfect couple as well.
But I'll bring the cashmere that I bought there. That's what I'm going to do.
Natalie, just tell us. We had an event on Friday night in Paris. We're launching, of course, a new program. Tell us a little bit about it. When's it? When is the premiere? And of course, there are a lot of people from, of course, the world of journalism. I hate to use the world of influence, but anyway, as well, who want to talk about fashion. What's going to be different about your program?
Exactly. So we recorded the first episode with Michael Klieger, CEO of My Teresa, on Friday, just before we had our event and had some drinks, and it will be launching on Wednesday. I think what's different is that we are going to be speaking to the CEOs, to the big designers, but I think we're bringing a much more global perspective, and we're also finding stories that are not as well known and mixing it all together. And another thing that I was saying is that in a lot of the fashion coverage at the moment, I think industry professionals talking to themselves or to other industry professionals within that fashion niche. But these are stories that of business, of craft, of great design that can apply to that are interesting to a much wider audience. So we want to open up the conversation a little bit more, and also just share what goes on behind the magazine and then the fashion section. So a little bit of behind the scenes, light, fun chats with the editors as well.
Okay, so just before we head back to London for the news, maybe you've had a little bit of time, you've got a bit of distance, of course, off the back of all of the fashion weeks. If you think about three things that stood out for you, three emerging designers, three established designers, big brands, when you think of what is coming, of course, will be landing on rails over the coming months for spring, summer 25, what are your standout moments for you?
It's an interesting question. You're right. It's been a while. I think looking back at Milan, the Tots show really stood out to me. They have a new creative director who's a Bottega Veneta alumni, and I think the collection was so beautiful, elegant, and a brand new direction. So once it lands in the shops in a few months, I'm sure there will be a lot more interest. And here in Paris as well, the Chanel show, where we were there together, was a real highlight, and I'm really excited to see it back in the Grand Palais and to see the new direction of the brand. There's a lot of talk about what's happening, but still, when you just focus on the product, you just see incredible, very desirable product that no matter who takes the bow at the end of the show, will keep selling. And I would also say there's a lot of momentum around the Japanese brands that had even more presence in Paris, especially names like Orally, which are in our October issue. So I would look to Japan as well for really great staples, really well-made clothes that, will last you for much more than a season.
Very good. Natalie Theodosi, of course, our fashion director, but also launching our new program, Monocle on Fashion, which will be hitting, of course, our airwaves very, very soon. Just gone at almost 10:32 here in Zurich, 9:32 in London. Emma Nelson is back there with the news headlines.
Thank you very much indeed, Tyler. At least 73 people are believed to have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in northern Gaza. Israel says the figures do not match information held by its military. Moldovans head to the polls today for a presidential election and an EU referendum that will mark a pivotal moment in the tug of war between Russia and the West over the country's future. The pro-Western president hopes to advance her agenda by winning a second term. The Italian Coast Guard has collected a group of migrants that were held in reception centres in Albania and has transferred them to Italy. It comes after an Italian court ruled that Delta bloated Rome's plans to house migrants picked up at sea outside the EU. And a goat escaped from his home and joined a local half marathon, winning a medal. Joshua spotted runners pounding past his patch in the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador and decided to join in. He covered around 3 miles before his owner realised what happened, caught up with him and gave him a lift in her car to the finish line, where he completed the race and picked up his medal. And those are the headlines. Back to you, Tyler, in Zurich.
Emma, any video of that?
No, unfortunately, but I do wonder whether we could all do with a companion goat to get us over the line every day. I think that would be marvellous.
Yeah, well, this is okay. Okay, so you don't even know this. I'm going to send you the photos afterwards. But I was when I was in Dubai on Thursday, we had a meeting with some of the ministers in the morning, etc. And then they said, actually, this evening we have our sort of our majlis, or sort of our gathering out in the desert of course various people who happen to be in town, and of course other Emiratis as well. So off we go in the Land Cruisers out into the desert, about sort of 40 minutes outside of Dubai, and we arrive at what this used to be this gentleman's, it still is the family farm.
Yeah.
And you get out there, and I thought, okay, well, it's going to be sort of like maybe a little bit of like a Nantucket setup, of course, without the J. Crew shop nearby. But actually it was a mix of being actually quite raw but of course still exquisitely done. But my God, there were a lot of goats. I mean, it was because I had to do my research. That are we in camel territory here? Because of course this would be the type of family that would have racing camels. They said we're in the territory of goats and chickens. But there's probably maybe 200 goats or something, and in a very, very large goat enclosure. But normally they're running wild. But of course we came to see you. We were having this meeting. But normally they're out and about normally. In normal time.
Were there some marathon runners?
I didn't see. There's no marathon runners. I'm not sure how these goats would do it. If they could do 3 miles or 5K. I'm not quite sure.
He did it pretty well, and there are pictures of him sort of running off and heading up little paths. And there's these wonderful photographs of him with his medal, looking as if he's done pretty well. I think he would have gone further had his owner not realised what he was up to. But I'm wondering whether we can explore sort of sportswear as well for running goats. It would be marvellous. I'm sure we could do get a little sort of sweatbands on the ankles.
Yeah, well, no, I thought you were going to say sort of using goats to make sportswear, because I'm sure that probably there's some goat leather on a good sneaker potentially. Anyway, but listen, also, and there's a lot going on in the world of also camel tanneries as well. So we were talking about sort of topics of sustain. No, but I mean, why wouldn't you want a camel handbag? Yeah. Right?
There's a lot. I mean, there is a lot. It's a big animal, so that you can use
that's
a lot.
That's like a whole
volume.
Yeah, it's like a steamer trunk. You could maybe a couple.
But is it going to be smelly?
No, I don't know. No, I mean,
no.
I'm not sure the tannery is fun.
Yeah, I don't think. The main tannery, it seems to be in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if that's up or downwind. But anyway, and this was amazing. 200 goats.
Pitch it next time you go to that farm.
200 goats and no smell. No smell though. So I guess and they weren't that far away. So anyway, I guess it has to do with probably the winds in the desert.
Oh no! I can tell you why that is. It's also, you can also tell in a goat cheese. If it stinks, it means that the goat is not clean.
Oh, really?
So if a goat,
to me, then I would say most goat's cheese that comes from really nasty, dirty sheep, because it's generally stinky.
No, usually a good fresh goat cheese is mild dish. It has that little zing, but if it really stinks, it means that the goat was not clean when it was milked.
Oh my goodness! Well, facts that we learn on
the topics of cheese.
Clean Dubai goats.
Listen, let's head to the far side of the Baltic right now. Very happy to say that our correspondent in Helsinki, Petri Burtsoff, is there for us this morning. Tervetuloa. Good morning.
Good morning, hyvää huomenta, Tyler, and everybody in the studio.
Yeah, listen, I don't know if you have anything to add on the topic of goats from the Finnish side of the world. I mean, you can jump into Estonia, Sweden as well, but we can also go elsewhere. I know we do have a story as well, which involves running and Finns around buildings. Maybe we want to start there.
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, our neighbors. I'm actually at our summer cottage just outside of Helsinki, and our neighbor has, I think, 10 goats. But yeah, he doesn't make cheese. He only makes. He doesn't make it, but he sells.
He makes curry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Juliet's
okay,
excited.
so let's get into this story. This is something like when I first read this piece, I couldn't believe it was true. But then I found a BBC story about it. So it's BBC, so it has to be true. So there's a race that takes place every year in New York. It's and check it out. It's a 3,100-mile running race. So it starts in August and it finishes today. And the runners, essentially they run about 120 kilometers every day for 2 months in this race. And this is the funniest thing. As I said, it takes place in New York, and they run in Queens around a single city block. And this is just completely crazy. And why am I talking about this in the Nordic news? Well, the world record holder is a Finnish guy called I don't know if this is like Hindi, so Asfirino Aalto. It's not very Finnish name. Apparently means the fire of the goal that burns in your heart. He was given that name after he has competed that race 17 times as of today. So that's the finish link. Sadly, he finished second this year. He's won it like 9 times before. And an Italian by the name of Andrea Marcato won the race. So hats off to Italy, of course. I mean, our guy has won it 9 times, so it's nice that Italy gets a win as well.
Petri, so Juliet, did you know about this? This was not in La Stampa. You didn't catch us in Corriere.
I'm trying to understand, Petri. They're going around one building like 9,000 times. a day, or like how does this work?
It's a one block. I saw a video. It's in Queens, so there's like a baseball field and like a medical center. But yes, one city block. They run around it for 5,649 times.
Insane. Every day
for
3 months.
Let's take it back out of New York. Let's be closer to home. What's happening maybe around your cottage or certainly elsewhere in Finland?
Well, what's happening elsewhere in Finland is the government pays you 10 grand if you make babies. So this is I thought this was quite nice. So I have two. I wasn't given 10 grand, but it's only in certain municipalities in northern Finland where they're really struggling with sort of just keeping up the population, I guess.
But wait, hold on. This is also playing the long game, because you think, okay, I don't know, maybe also there'll be changes in employment legislation as well. But of course, you've got to wait 16, 17 years, of course, until you have people who can join the workforce. Maybe they'll start them at 12 in northern Finland. I'm not sure, but this is quite extraordinary. But could you take that 10? So could you move with your family, get the 10 grand, and then go back south? I mean, who's going to check?
Oh yeah, I did look into this because that was the first thing that crossed my mind. No, apparently you get 1,000 euros per year for the first 10 years, so you have to live there for 10 years. So I'm not doing it. I'll stay in Helsinki.
But what is the discussion around this, though, in Finland as yes, it makes sense. Of course, there's always been baby bonuses in many countries, maybe not 1 grand a year, but there are, of course, incentive programs all over the place. But this idea of sort of regionalizing it, is this a bit of a discussion on the side of the opposition? And if I was to pick up the Helsingin Sanomat this morning, what would they be saying about it?
Well, I mean, this is a conversation and debate we've had for a long time. Obviously, we're not the only country in Europe that is sort of grappling with this. But the thing is, I mean, the reason why this is news now, as you said, we've been talking about it for a long time. But they studied the effects of this financial incentive. It turns out that they're not enough to convince people who otherwise won't have babies to have babies. But what they do achieve is that people want to have children earlier than they would when they get these bonuses. So that's one effect that they have. But I mean, of course, a lot of researchers are saying that this is not addressing the root cause of the problem, which is, of course, that younger people have sort of more precarious employment, makes it harder for them to do long-term planning compared with earlier generations, so on and so forth. But I think this is mainly, the way I see it, is a great branding tool for those municipalities in the north where people otherwise wouldn't move there. So it not only gives you money, but it also sort of shows that, hey, you're sort of you look at this issue long term, and as you said, you think about what the workforce will be like in the future. So I see this more as a sort of a branding exercise as something that has a long-term effect.
Petri, maybe let's turn to topics geopolitical. We read, of course, in the past week, both Sweden and Finland, new NATO members, standing up their naval fleets, joining, of course, significant exercises in the Baltic with the rest of NATO forces. That's on the surface, but also there's been a bit of a focus, of course, with undersea infrastructure as well, which we don't often forget about. Of course, we can think about Nord Stream and all of these other things, but what is sort of the skin that of course Finland has in this game?
Well, Finland, obviously, not only the Nord Stream, which was a big thing for Finland, but then also the Baltic connector cable connecting Finland and Sweden, which was a data cable. So, we're talking about data transfers, but also vital energy infrastructures. And why this is in the news now is that Norway and Germany announced this week that they're going to join forces to do something about this problem. Because when the Nord Stream attacks happened, it was, of course, people were asking, well, why weren't these sites protected? And then basically military experts said that, well, there's no way that we can patrol the entire Baltic Sea. It's not feasible. So what NATO did is they established some kind of a center in the UK that is in charge of sort of networking and pooling resources, the stuff that the bare minimum that you can do. But what Norway and Germany now want to do is they want to establish these 5 regional hubs that monitor and safeguard undersea infrastructure in key maritime areas. And we're not only talking about the Baltic Sea, but the North Sea, even the Black Sea. But it's still not, there's just no way that we can have 24/7 surveillance in these areas, but it's sort of it's all about having a credible deterrent, showing that NATO takes it seriously. Sort of in the same way you can't have a cop preventing every crime everywhere, but you can increase the amount of cops in the street and sort of give this deterrent by doing that. So I think it's something similar to that.
And Petri, just before we go, speaking of cops on the street, in our upcoming issue, November issue, you've got quite a large reportage on Finns, of course, a country which has conscription, but you do a little bit of a survey of people who want to, you could say sort of, pick up arms and become part of, a reboot in Finland's defenses.
Yeah, so this is a story about voluntary defense. So, of course, Finland has for men compulsory military service, but it's not compulsory for women. Some women volunteers do the compulsory, the men's service as well. But now tens of thousands of Finns have started to take part in these voluntary defense courses, which is basically, instead of spending a year in the forest, it's a weekend somewhere in the countryside where they teach you how to shoot a rifle and so on. So I joined one of those training weekends. I think it was like 90% women and young women in particular that I interviewed there. It was quite interesting.
And did that also reflect the total numbers as well? That if you say it out of the entire group, it was 90% when you just chose to interview 90% women in terms of your interview pool?
No, of the participants that I saw there, the majority of them was women. But I think it has something to do with the fact that men already have the compulsory service. So when this was a voluntary training, so it's understandable that most of them were women. But I mean, I was still quite I have to say positively surprised to see so many people taking part. Now these are you don't get paid to go to these courses. They don't. I mean, they're basically just for your own sort of if you need to use a gun or if there is something like wartime scenarios, or you have some training. So it was quite surprising to see so many participants.
Petri Burtsoff, our correspondent in Helsinki, thank you very, very much. Juliet, just over to you very quickly. If your kids were, are they Swiss citizens? Or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so if Jamie, national service?
Definitely. I think it'd be brilliant for everyone, girls and boys.
Good.
I'd do it.
Yeah,
love to tote a gun.
Absolutely. What do you...
Thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks?
No, I was involved in youth programs where you sort of do the same. You go to tent camp, so I learned everything.
It's not just about tents, though, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you learn, like with the scouts, you learn some survival skills.
Okay.
Sans the arms. No, I would not join the military. No.
Gabe?
I wasn't even in scouts, too paramilitary.
Okay, all right.
That's the young,
my goodness.
Young Gabe, yes, and my...
I'm glad to see that
you did.
No, well, we didn't have conscription. I was in the cadets very briefly until we moved, and it was weird being in the cadets in a landlocked part of Canada.
Is that like Boy Scouts?
No, cadets is like sort of like it's like junior military. So it's Canadian Navy.
Did you drop out?
I didn't drop out. We moved to Montreal, and then I didn't re-engage because we didn't have a sort of an armory, a caserna near us. So I couldn't continue. We're going to go head back to London right now. Jeremy Leslie is there for us. Of course, he's the founder of Magculture, frequent voice, of course, on the Stack. Also appears on other programs as well, and he is gearing up for Magculture Live, which is going to tell us a little bit more about. But Jeremy, good morning. Very, very nice to have you on the program. But maybe let's just survey the newsstand first. And for those of our listeners around the world who don't know what you've been up to in the world of retail, tell us about Magculture.
Good morning, Tyler. Lovely to be here with you. Well, I mean, Magculture has existed one way or the other for about, coming up to 18 years now. First just online, but we now have, we're heading towards our 9th anniversary of having our shop here in central London, specialising in the world of magazines and the new generation of magazines that we've been, watching grow over the last couple of decades.
So I want to just maybe let's if we walked into your shop today. I think you're closed on Sundays though, aren't you? But if we walk in tomorrow, maybe just tell us what you're seeing. What is front and center? What's exciting you right now from the world of magazines?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's always so much happening. I mean, there are the kind of the big pillars of our world, which are The Gentlewoman, MacGuffin, Fantastic Man, Apartamento. Magazines which may be familiar to some of your listeners here, and then there's always a host of new things happening. Right now, we've noticed there's a lot of kind of smaller magazines. I think this kind of reflects our general kind of economic situation. Magazines that maybe aren't quite as thick or as heavy or as bold in their intent, but nonetheless have great creativity and great ideas behind them. And we've seen some magazines morph from bigger to smaller. I think what one comes to mind is Riposte, which sort of established itself in the 2010s as a lifestyle magazine for women, and that's been reinvented much along the lines of its founder Daniel Pender, who has moved into publishing and writing short, stories and stuff. So it's more of a literary journal now, and it's smaller, but it's still beautiful. And it uses the title Riposte Editions. So we've seen that happen. And then on the other side of the Atlantic, very interestingly, I think a lot of sort of older titles that maybe sort of disappeared in the turn of the century and after, magazines like Vice, Saveur, Spin, the Music Mag. These are all returning to print. They've seen what's happening in the independent scene, and people are looking and thinking, well, we're not going to come back as a monthly magazine, but we're going to relaunch as a more considered quarterly or biannual. And so I think people are beginning to turn around and starting to invest here.
And why do you think that's happening, particularly in the US? Because you can, I think we often talk about this, Jeremy. You go to France, and there are new magazines launching in France all the time, and there's just this energy, and you see a sense of reinvention. You see the importance of news weeklies in France, and also the power of supplements and newspapers. But there is this energy and pace that's happening. But the US, as you said, has been a really different story, and it's been a story about shuttering. Of course, there's been a power of a lot of independent magazines in the US for sure. But as you said, these were when you mentioned the likes of Spin, Saveur coming back, etc. These were, not quite. You wouldn't say Spin was a supermarket magazine, but you would have been able to go into a Walgreens drugstore, a CVS. You would have found it on pretty much any newsstand anywhere in the US. Saveur would have been at the checkout at most grocery stores, and then it disappeared. Why is this happening, do you think? I think initially it was just this. Everybody kind of went with the flow in terms of the future is digital. That's where the advertising will be. That's where we're going to have success. And I think it's turned out that it's not so simple. The easy money of digital has evaporated even quicker than the advertising did in print. And I think people are turning back to thinking, well, how can we address this market? And I think something like Spin is interesting. I think Pitchfork, a long-established online brand covering the music scene, got shuttered itself. It was an online presence that Condé Nast bought and hoped to invest in, but it didn't work out. So they've kind of wrapped that into into the GQ team. And I think some of the original people behind Spin have seen the opportunity to move back in and try and cover the music in print. We've got Gabe Bullard here, who's nodding. I think it's certainly the crisp turn of paper and delight for his ears. But what's your take on it, having just, of course, been back in the States?
Yeah, I think so. One of my prized collections on the shelf is when Pitchfork did try a print run about 10 years ago and abandoned it, I think, under some of that pressure, perhaps from the corporate leadership. I'm not totally sure why it went away, but it stopped showing up. But I find that here you're on a train, you're on a plane, people are reading, people have papers, people have magazines, and there just isn't that selection. And I am glad to see somebody start doing it. I keep hearing rumblings from folks who I've worked with in the States before saying, we not only want to get a newsroom back together, we want to put it back in print. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I worked at National Geographic for a while, sort of during the sale to Fox, right before the sale of Fox to Disney then, and this changing of hands. And I think one thing I saw there was just, as the ownership gets larger, as the ownership gets more powerful and less focused on print, they start receding from all the things that make the magazine special. If you're a magazine that is so heavy on photos and you're going to stop featuring a notable photo on the cover, you're going to go to illustrations, you're going to stop trying to even get newsstand sales. I feel like we can talk about how advertising shifted and everything, and I think that's a big part of it, but a lot of it is self-inflicted, I think, for U.S. publishers and just giving up.
Absolutely. I think it's not just U.S. publishers. I think the publishing industry, and on the mainstream side of things, so much of what the damage that has been done has been absolutely self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm. I just want to also pick up on that as well. If you want to see a real literally a desert when it comes to print. Spend some time out in the Middle East and the Gulf. There are no magazines. You go to any airport lounge, you go into grocery stores, whatever. There's no paper. I mean, there's no bookstores actually. This is the alarming thing. And the biggest bookstore player, interestingly enough, if you're in Dubai, is Kinokuniya from Japan. So you have, it's not even a European retailer who is like, in the game. You have, Kinokuniya delivering a grocery store size bookshop, which I have to say though has just the most amazing array of prints. So the flip side is though, there you've got this one player, and they've just got a delirious collection of magazines from all over the world. Jeremy, just tell us quickly before we go. You've got, of course, Magculture Live coming up. What happens on stage, and what's the event all about?
Well, we do it twice a year. We've already done the New York one back in the summer. This is the London edition. It is a day of celebration of the joy of print, both from an editorial standpoint and a design standpoint. People come along. You will hear from some of the leading players in terms of making magazines right now. In terms of talking about US magazines, Richard Turley's a British art director who's probably one of the most interesting, certainly one of the most provocative creative directors out there at the moment, who reinvented Interview magazine and has helped turn that around. He's just redesigned Rolling Stone. They've invested a lot of money in reinventing that magazine for print. So he's headlining. We've got another American designer, a young woman called Shira Imbar, who is fascinatingly combines the world of motion graphics with print graphics. Doing a lot of really interesting print work with brands, in fact. So, and again, this is another trend we're seeing. She has produced a lot of magazines for A24, the film production distribution company, and then there's some representatives from the independent scene. The editor of Lucy Rober, the editor of Erotic Review, on relaunching that magazine. Nina Carter from It's Freezing in LA. So we've got a lineup of talks. We'll be celebrating print. The people will be coming in from across Europe to represent various shops and distributors that are invested in this new scene.
Jeremy, just before we go, so if people want to get tickets, it's on the 7th. Where is it happening? Of course, people are listening around the world, but hey, people are going to fly in from Paris or take the train from Paris, or maybe fly in from Amsterdam.
People are very welcome to fly in. Join us on the 7th of November. All the information is online at magculture.com. If you can't fly in, you can join us online. It'll be live streamed. It's going to be a great day, and I hope you'll all join us.
Very good. Jeremy Leslie from Magculture joining us there from London. We're just almost out of time. Myriam, you're heading, as we said, off to Mallorca. Have you bought your magazines? What are you reading? What's going with you? Because it can't just all be dancing when you're in Palma, wherever you end up in Mallorca.
Actually, I'm bringing along a book.
That's it. Okay, not the the newish Confect. Have you already read? You already devoured that as well.
I already have it. I have one. Actually, yes, I have one with me, but I'm going to give it away.
Okay, that's what we like. Yeah. For the train trip back to Basel now, Gabe?
I've got a fresh London Review of Books and Times Literary Supplement. So
okay, and of course, we've got a good kiosk here as well.
I think I'll be spending a few minutes there. Yeah.
Yeah, Juliet.
The new Monocle magazine that's just come out.
Well, not even out. I mean, it's only if you. I know you got a sneak preview, but new edition, of course, is going to be hitting newsstands this coming Thursday, our November issue already. Right. People are very, very busy already working on December, January. We've got Alpino coming out. We've got the forecast. Myriam, we've got another Confect to get out the door as well, of course. Juliet, you've got an assignment coming up.
I did it already. You already went to Munich with as well. With a Persian-German designer. But I loved the interview that Tom Webb did with Francis Ford Coppola in this new Monocle magazine that's about to come out. And what I love is his upbeat take. Everyone is so, the world is a mess and everything. And he is saying the younger generation, they're so talented because they are based, they improve on previous generations. How about everyone saying, the new generation, these youngsters, Love his take on it. And he says, be creative because we'll have robots to do everything else, or we got to play and have fun. Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to say as well, we've got one of our friends who used to be around the microphone he's sort of jockeying for a big piece he wants to do on Rome as well. A piece he wants to do
not
in
a
Rome.
piece. I mean, maybe there might be peace. No, he wants a piece from Rome for us, but you could maybe sort of be his backup act on that. For sure. But we can talk about that off air. Yep. Myriam, very good to see you. Enjoy your time in Mallorca. Gabe, have a good trip back. Juliet, I'm sure we might see you across the week. Also, a big thanks to Natalie Theodosi, who's joining us from Paris, Petri Burtsoff, who, of course, was in Helsinki for us, and Jeremy Leslie in London, our producers today, Mariella Bevan and Emma Nelson, and also our studio manager here in Zurich, Linus Vivian. I'm Tyler Brûlé. I'm back next week as well. We're going to be here for another week before we head out on the road again. Have a lovely Sunday and a very good week. Goodbye.